We're glad you joined us today. We're going to keep coming to you with updates on crime and safety in Salt Lake City as our crime control plan continues to be implemented, and we keep tracking on a weekly basis really where it's at and what the impacts are looking like. 2 weeks ago, our total citywide crime was down 1.7% in Salt Lake City. And today we're really encouraged that that margin has increased to 2.2%. We're continuing in an improving direction, and we're continuing to feel yet unsatisfied. And so we're keeping on. And this by no means represents an absence of crime in Salt Lake City. And every single day, residents, visitors, business owners in this city are experiencing crime in Salt Lake City. And we are driven, and we are committed to making sure that we continue to see these numbers go down, and we continue to work with our communities on ways to make Salt Lake City safer for everyone. There's the incremental improvements you're going to actually see in some of the slides that Chief has prepared today across the board. Happy to talk about the details therein and the actions we're taking around them. And we want Salt Lake City residents and visitors and people who invest in the city to know that we are in this for the long haul, and that there really is no finish line around safety in Salt Lake City. So we're happy to give you the update today. And Chief, I'll let you take it from there.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I want you to know that I take crime personally. I really do. The safety and well-being of everybody who lives, who visits, who works here in Salt Lake City is my #1 priority. I lose sleep at night thinking about things, the crime here, and what we can do to better serve our communities. What we're going to go through is a Compstat report, or the crime trends analysis, that we do here in Salt Lake City. We do it every week. We prepared some slides for everybody. Hopefully it'll direct maybe some of the conversation, but what's important is, as we go through, please stop and ask questions, be involved in the conversation, so that we don't have to wait to the end. It's much easier as we go. So
that's why we're sitting here, not standing there. Maybe you'll talk to us a little easier.
So first slide, please. This is a slide that kind of shows the overall picture of the crime trends here in Salt Lake City, citywide. The first bullet is citywide crime is down 18% in the last 28 days. We look at crime in different periods, last 7 days, 28 days, previous days, but in the last 28 days, crime is down 18%. Citywide, violent crime is up 8% in the last 28 days. That's concerning, like the mayor said. Anytime crime goes up, it's concerning and it's important, and we're working on it. Citywide property crime is down 21% in the last 28 days. And as the mayor mentioned, citywide overall crime is down 2% year to date. Now, that's a small number, but that number represents offenses, and offenses are victims. But when you take the challenges of 2020 that have kind of transposed into 2021, that's a lot of great work by our officers. But by any means, we are not done. Next slide. Or questions?
I wanted to chime in that murders have risen 16% in many American cities over the last 6 months, just this year. And homicides are up 23% compared to last year in the first quarter of 2021, and up by 10% in the second quarter of 2021. So Salt Lake City, unfortunately, and the state of Utah as a whole actually, is not unique in this tragic rise in violent crimes around homicide. Yeah.
23% uptick in homicides in Salt Lake City.
No, nation.
No.
Major American cities. That's first quarter of 21. They're up 10% in the second quarter of 21 in those same major American cities.
And how far up here, Mayor? Here in Salt Lake?
We're up 6% or 7% right now.
For homicides?
No, I was talking violent crime. So these are quarterly numbers, and our Compstat looks at 28 days and year to date.
16, 14. That's the year to date.
So we're up 14.3 year to date. in Salt Lake City.
On the homicides.
Right, and I'm sorry, because we don't have quarterlies on the Compstat, you could break it down on the website. You can select the time range if you want to make that comparison.
That's from last year to this year, correct?
That's right, to this point in time, yes.
So to
Thank
put a
you.
number on it, in 2020, year-to-date, we had 14. Year-to-date, this year, we've had 16. That's the increase of 14.3%.
And on the Compstat, you can look at the breakout of what those violent crime types are, from domestic violence to homicide and others.
We've talked about this disparity between the drop in overall crime and the rise in violent crime before. What is it on the streets why is this occurring? Are there theories? Do you have good ideas?
Well, Jed, I think, I don't know if you can point to one particular item or thing. I think there's many factors. I think COVID has put a strain on our communities. As you know, there were more handguns sold in 2020 than many other years previous. It seems as if there are many handguns on the street and in possession of people that shouldn't have them. And it seems as if conflict resolution is being done with weapons, and firearms, and assaults.
The economic pressures on families and individuals have been exceptional throughout the pandemic, and that's continued. So at this point, we're seeing that research is happening around the country and why this divergence between violent crime and overall crime is happening. But I think it's speculative at this point and anecdotal with the experiences we've seen, and the research is really in process still.
You also have plans for a 10-person violent crimes task force. How is that coming together?
It's in the works right now. When we've talked about staffing in the past, we're down 57 officers right now. So we'd like to get them funded, or them hired and in the academies and on the street. But as we move through, you need to remember that that's 10 additional officers. This is the first time in many years that we've exceeded our 571 or our authorized staffing. So we'll start putting that together and outlining what that is going to look like probably first of next year.
I want to just highlight also, Jed, the press conference we had last week as an update on our Project Safe Neighborhoods with U.S. Attorney, U.S. Marshal, ATF, and Department of Public Safety with the state. 152 defendants have been charged. Their average sentence is 29 months. And it's hard to imagine if we hadn't started that program back in January and we had these high impact in terms of community impact criminals still on our streets today. I'm grateful that we started this work with the U.S. Attorney and Marshal at the felony level crimes, that more than half of those 152 defendants were in illegal possession of a firearm, meaning they'd been prohibited and banned from carrying one, and they still were. So I think I sort of shudder to imagine if we hadn't started this process on the felony level. But we know that there are crimes that start as misdemeanors and end up either in that same instance transforming into more violent crime, or that those patterns of behavior can escalate into felony level crimes. And so we're working at the same time at the misdemeanor level to try to explore how we can execute perhaps a similar program to what we've been able to do with the U.S. Attorney. I don't have an update on that for you today, but I want you to know that while we're working on the felony level, we're also exploring what can happen with the high impact misdemeanor level.
Thank you.
On that same front, Chief and Mayor, either of you can answer this. I know you both have been passionate about the homelessness issue here, especially Mayor Mendenhall, what you came out with yesterday. I know you said there's more homeless people than beds right now, and that's an issue too. Anything with homelessness and crime, any sort of indication or correlation that can be tied to an increase in, I know property crimes in some areas have gone up. I know typically they say the homeless crowd aren't committing violent crimes, but have you guys seen that population in crime, any sort of indication or correlation there?
Yeah, we have. When there's encampments, they tend to create a hot spot of crime. Not necessarily violent crime. It can. But those are things that we track. We track those trends, those hot spots, and through this mechanism of review and analysis, this is how we deploy our assets. And so, yeah, but it's not always just homeless issues. There are hot spots with other type of crimes throughout the city.
What are the crimes, maybe you can talk more about, like what kind of things they're committing? Are they like just petty theft kind of things?
Thefts, yeah, things like that, car prowls. But again, there are other hot spots that involve stolen cars. So there's a lot of different things that we track and we follow up on. Mayor,
to add to that, are you concerned about that? With, you know, some areas obviously rising in crime, some areas are decreasing. Homelessness has just been an issue for so long. Every single county council member, that was the big thing they were running on. Is there anything helping to change that?
Yes, but that's a separate press conference.
Okay, well, when you have that, let me know.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you.
But to follow up just a quick, I mean, those encampments, sometimes there are people that are predatory, and they prey upon the very vulnerable people, and they use them as cover as well. So you can't just stigmatize those that are experiencing homelessness with those crimes. It's collectively what's happening out there.
Thank you.
Should we go to the next slide?
Okay, next slide, please. When the mayor mentioned that crime is down 2.2% or 2%, this is what it looks like. If you look at the stats, if you take the property crimes, those offenses of property crime, and you add those to the offenses of violent crime, in 2020 we had 14,763. In 2021 we had 14,442. We are down 321 offenses. When you look at that, you're really looking at fewer victims.
And I'll just reiterate that this is just really a beginning of us going in a better and right direction, and it's in no way trying to say that there's an absence of crime or that we have achieved some level of satisfaction with this. We're saying that the ship is being righted, and we're going to keep pulling as hard as we can to turn it in a better direction every single day.
Next slide. This is District 1. As you know, there are 7 council districts within the city, and we break them down to district reporting. In District 1, in the last 28 days, overall crime is down 22%. District 1 violent crime is up 5% in the last 28 days. District 1 property crime is down 25% in the last 28 days. And so the overall picture for crime for District 1 year to date is crime is up 17% year to date. So you can see we still have a lot of work to do. Next slide. District 2, same analysis. Overall crime in the last 28 days is down 13%. Violent crime in the last 28 days is up 12%. District 2 property crime is down 16% in the last 28 days, and District 2 overall crime is up 1% year to date. Next slide. District 3, overall crime is down 37% in the last 28 days. District 3 violent crime is up 46% in the last 28 days. District 3 property crime is down 43% in the last 28 days, and District 3 overall crime is down 17% year to date. So you can see with violent crime in District 3, we do have some work to do. But that's, again, part of the process of analysis and then acting and putting our resources to that type of crime. Next slide. District 4. District 4 overall crime is down 22% in the last 28 days. District 4 violent crime is up 5% in the last 28 days. District 4 property crime is down 25% in the last 28 days. And then overall crime year to date is up 6%. Any questions? Okay, next slide, please. District 5, overall crime is up 4% in the last 28 days. District 5 violent crime is up 43% in the last 28 days. District 5 property crime is up 1% in the last 28 days. And District 5 overall crime is down 5% year to date. Moving on to District 6. District 6 overall crime is down 31% in the last 28 days. District 6 violent crime is down 100% in the last 28 days. District 6 property crime is down 29% in the last 28 days. And District 6 overall crime is down 32% year to date. And the last slide, or the last district is District 7. Overall crime in the last 28 days is down 30%. District 7 violent crime is down 45% in the last 28 days. District 7 property crime is down 29% in the last 28 days. And District 7 overall crime is down 8% year to date. So that is a look at the 7 districts here in Salt Lake City. This data is released weekly, and it's put on our website for anybody that would like to review it. But I want you to know we take the data serious because it represents victims. We analyze it weekly, we act upon it daily. And what we're seeing right now is fewer crimes, which means it's a safer community for all. But to that end, we are not done. This is just the beginning. We've started to bend that arc. We're trending in a good direction, but we're going to keep our foot on the pedal and continue to work to make our communities safer each and every day. But the one thing, we talk about numbers, we talk about Compstat, we talk about all these things. None of this happens without the officers on the street working hard, trying to reduce those calls. So I want to give a big shout out to those officers that are doing this work 24/7 to keep our communities safe here in Salt Lake City.
So Chief, can you talk about when you get data like this, how you adjust your game plan? I mean, do you send more officers to a certain district to patrol heavier for like a week at a time? Or what do you do when you get this data?
Well, we have a Compstat meeting, that's what we call it, but we really just look at this data. When we look at, we delegate to the commanders of the different districts that are over these districts to analyze what is happening and then to come up with a plan. And then the most important thing is to act quickly. You can never sit and wait. If you wait 30 days to do something, the trend is up and moved. So we act quickly, but we actually take resources, whatever it may be. I mean, we have bike squads, we have our park squad, we have narcotics, we have vice. Any tool that we have on our belt or any unit, we direct those resources to impact that crime. And then, just as important as the acting is to follow up to see if it's worked. So if it's working, let's do more of it. If it's not, let's go back to the drawing board and see what we need to do.
So when you might have noticed that the only district to have an increase in overall crime in the last 28 days is District 5. You better believe that we have got operations going in District 5 as a response to this. But the second thing is to people who say, I don't call, why should I call and report crime? Nothing happens. An officer might not show up, depending on what the call is or when the incident happened. Please call and report your crime. Go online and report the crime if it's something that happened and it's already passed. This matters, and it directs how we put our resources. So all of this that you're seeing is because somebody let us know that something was happening.
And was there,
Go ahead, Pat.
I'm just saying, was there a certain incident, or did something cause these numbers to spike in the last 28 days?
You probably have.
Yeah,
the
oh yeah,
Compstat
there's,
for-
yeah, I mean,
So you can go, when you go to Compstat, you can select per district, and you can look at that complete breakdown of all the types of crime over the last 28 days for that area.
yeah, if you'll, the first slide is the overall crime, which we touched on up front, but each district has a slide and you can look at what's driving it. Sometimes it's, I mean, what we've been seeing lately is a lot of aggravated assaults on the street. And sadly, there are aggravated family offenses that are occurring and driving some of these crime numbers up, or these violent crime numbers up. So you can break it down and see what we're trying to do in each of those districts.
And so,
Well, you can't see what we're trying to do. You can see what we're working on.
well, I guess, are you concerned with the holidays coming up, and that's usually a tense time for families and maybe more domestic violence? Is there a message or resources you're trying to get out there for people so this doesn't keep going up? Or what message do you have for that? I mean, we're going into Thanksgiving next week and then Christmas. I mean, domestic violence is typically up there in that time.
Yeah, the message is we take family violence very serious. And if we're dispatched to a call, we will make sure that the victims are safe. But more than safe, that they have the resources to carry on their lives and to continue doing, you know, to be safe with their family and their children or whatever it may be. The police department has victim advocates. that work hand in glove with our officers. And so if they go out on a domestic situation, the officers can bring that help with them. We have the advocates that have all kinds of resources that we can get them in a moment's notice. So it's a great follow-up to just investigating a crime.
Historically, have District 3 and District 5 been more violent than other districts?
Well,
Those are the two where we've seen that spike in the violent crimes.
Jed, I think we'd have to go back historically when you're talking and look at a 5-year average, and those are all on there. So I can't make that comment right now without looking at it.
Sure.
But what's important is when you look at this Compstat report or this trend, you can see what's happened in the last 7 days. You can see what happened in the last 28 days. So that's a really good view of what we need to work on.
and I'll mention two things that are maybe not coming to mind for the general public in this conversation, but I immediately start thinking about the concentration of poverty along State Street and North Temple, the lack of access to case management and affordable housing that tends to concentrate people in these areas where motels exist and where night-to-night rentals are possible. And for really generations, we've seen certain climates of crime exist because of the lack of resources and the concentration of these kind of opportunities. So what I think of then is the announcements we made recently around some deep investment in the ballpark area. We have a State Street area project plan that, as a redevelopment agency, we hope that the county will sign on and help us to invest in. Regardless, we're investing in the ballpark area because as much as we need our great officers on the streets and we need to be dynamic in the way we deploy those resources, our neighborhoods need childcare. They need fresh food that they have access to. They need the kind of resources like a library that bring enhancement and vitality to neighborhoods. So it matters that we're taking the initiative right here at this table, but also from every other department in Salt Lake City to figure out how do we affect what has been going on in our streets for decades in a way that changes the trajectory of families for generations to come. And you'll see in the crime control plan to the District 3 in the downtown crime presence, the business engagement officer, the BCEO, CBEO program. And that's one of our approaches to giving the downtown area some more direct resources of communication and police that they need. But we're going to keep iterating to figure out ways to serve these areas that really, it probably is historic, Jed, and we can look at the data to show that, but it's not a surprise really as a Salt Laker that certain areas need much more investment than just the Salt Lake City Police Department coming in.
On that same line, I mean, if community members were here, it's great to hear that, but what can they look forward to in the future? I don't know how long Chief Brown will be having these meetings with crime data, but what can a community member look forward to with the numbers or even with what they see out in their neighborhoods from police or from city officials and leaders?
Well, they're going to keep seeing us get in front of you guys and give you updates on how the crime control plan is impacting quality of life in Salt Lake City and asking our community to help us iterate on what that crime control plan should look like. Whether that's training or it's about deployment of resources or it's about community conversations that are happening in our community councils or at the Commission on Racial Equity and Policing. We are constantly exploring how we can improve policing and your quality of life in Salt Lake City, and we want you at the table with us.
Yeah, to the mayor's point, one of our goals for the crime control plan is to build relationships with our community. And I can't tell you there's not a better partner in reducing crime than a relationship with a community that's willing to work with us, to let us know, to be our ears and eyes, and to help us. That's invaluable. I mean, I'll bridge into the situation that we dealt with this afternoon, or just prior to noon, down on State Street. We received a call from community members that said there was an individual walking with a gun, pointing a gun, aiming it at vehicles and people. That was at 11:34. At 11:35, officers were dispatched to the scene. So within a minute, we've got cops going. At 11:36, we get more calls from people saying, hey, he's pointing a gun, he's now at this location. At 11:37, 2 minutes after being dispatched, we're on scene at the city and county building and interacting with this individual. That's how important relationships are with the community we serve.
Well, I wasn't going to bring that up, but because you did,
Okay.
I want to give a shout out to our officers who did an incredible job using less lethal weapons when the individual was completely non-compliant to their requests, and was able to safely get him to some assistance for what he was going through. They did an incredible job.
Yeah, it was a fantastic work. This individual had a facsimile. It was an air pistol, but these officers didn't know that. You couldn't tell that from a distance. They interdicted him with less lethal. They fired a less lethal round. They were able to safely take him into custody. He sustained minor injuries, was transported to the hospital, checked out, and is most likely going to be booked into jail for aggravated assault charges. But from start to finish, 11:34 to 11:40, this is over and done and handled so safely. So I have to, I mean, to the officers that were there today, they did a fantastic job. They used their experience and their training. They did everything they were supposed to do, and we had a fantastic outcome. So kudos to the officers and their great work.
Follow up to the relationships. Are you finding people of all races, religions, and ages coming to the table to want to have those conversations, or is that one of the tougher parts of getting people to come to the table?
I think across this country, gratefully, what we're seeing cities and counties and states recognize is you don't just have to set the table and expect people to walk in. You have to make a bigger table, and then you have to get a van and drive out there proverbially and invite people to come along. And sometimes you need to take the table with you and set it up in their front yard so it's easier for them to get to the conversation. So we aren't just growing a bigger table by creating the Commission on Racial Equity and Policing that's doing some incredibly impactful, inclusive, ongoing work, which we're inviting the community to continue to participate in. But we're changing the way that we operate even with our boards and commissions as a city. We're changing the way we imagine what that participation and access looks like, and figuring out ways that we can even subsidize your public transit to get there or your childcare so that you can have the time to participate. And I think Salt Lake City is leading the way in the state of Utah, and we're trying to get even more best practices as they evolve from across the country. So make a bigger table, take the table outside, put the table in a truck and take it to another neighborhood.
My people wanted to follow up on the guy who had the facsimile gun. Could you kind of just do the nuts and bolts about where this was and, how many people he fired at, stuff like that? Do you have that info?
I don't have all that. It started, though, I think the first call we received was from community members saying that they observed him at 400 South and State Street walking. I believe he's walking southbound, and he continued to pull out this gun, aim and point it at vehicles and people as they are walking by. So he eventually walked around to the south side or the southeast corner of the city and county building. That's where our officers first interacted with him.
Can you clarify what you mean by less lethal for those that don't understand that terminology?
It's an impact round that has the capacity to knock somebody, to have an impact, to render them so that they don't want to continue resisting or fighting or continuing that action.
Is it the shotgun that
Yeah.
basically shoots a beanbag?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I've just been combing through your Compstat, because you guys have mentioned this so many times, the significant increase in those weapons offenses from year to year is about 26%. When you see that number, it's your most drastic increase from year to date, at least in these numbers here. And what are you thinking of? How are you adjusting? Are you feeling that maybe there's an increase in certain activities somewhere, certain groups? Is it gang related? Do you have any thoughts on that number?
The weapons, and especially guns, is impacting all parts of violent crime. So there's nothing off the table as far as what we're looking at to reduce those in our community. It could be gangs. It could be people that are out on parole that shouldn't have those weapons, persons, restricted individuals. So I wish there was one big red easy button. We could say that's how you fix it. But it involves more than just the police department, because every day our officers are making arrests, seizing guns, taking people to jail. It's going to take all of us, the whole criminal justice system, the prosecution, pretrial, the judges, parole. All of us have to come together to look at how holistically we're going to have an impact on gun crime.
And I would wager that increase in the weapons, if you look at the national numbers, is not very unique. And as we mentioned earlier, those violent crimes are up all over. And of the 152 arrests that have been made through the U.S. Marshal Partnership, Project Safe Neighborhoods, 124 guns have been taken off the street in that work. So it's made and that's just with the U.S. Marshal Project Safe Neighborhoods work that we're doing. So more guns taken off the street. Our bike patrol right now is crushing it, and they are doing an incredible job with removing guns and drugs from our public spaces in addition.
Yeah, I think, not every gun that we seize is prosecuted through the Project Safe Neighborhood process. But I think we've seized over 500 guns this year alone here in Salt Lake City.
Thank you. So Chief, just curious, back to the Incident City County building, do you feel your officers would have handled it the same way 5 years ago as they did today? I'm just wondering if any of this, reform in the way they handle these cases is, now you're handling these things with less lethal. Has it been the same way 5 years ago?
We had less lethal 5 years ago. We didn't have very many. So the chances of having an officer show up on scene with that type of tool was less than it is today, because we've invested in many more of these type of tools. And so they're in the cars, they're in the trunks, officers are trained to use them. So I think the response today was outstanding, and I'm not quite sure how it would have looked 5 years ago.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.